Okay, so get this. I've actually cut the cord on my home fiber. I'm running everything just off my phone's 5G now.
Wow, really?
Yeah, crazy, right? But it made me wonder, could this actually be the start of something new?
That's a huge jump. It definitely sets up what we're looking into today.
Exactly. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a good look at whether mobile internet, specifically 5G, could become a real stand-in for those traditional home internet boxes.
And we've been digging through quite a bit. Reddit chats, expert takes on security and mobile plans, even some tech comparisons between fiber and 5G.
Right. Our mission is basically to figure out if ditching the landline and going full cellular for your home internet is, well, viable. What works, what doesn't, what are the catches?
And that personal switch you made is a perfect starting point. It really highlights that core question, the appeal of mobile freedom versus, the known quantity of fixed lines.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the reaction online, especially on Reddit, wasn't exactly overwhelmingly supportive of my little experiment. Oh yeah, one user, Smartfeel, just flat out posted "N-on," all caps.
Subtle.
Very. They listed a bunch of reasons. Impractical, unstable, the upload speeds are too slow, shared IP addresses causing problems, even battery drain on the phone. Although they did concede that dedicated 5G routers might solve the battery issue.
That lines up with some other concerns. Top Thing 99999 pointed out how 4G networks are already pretty saturated in places, expecting them to suddenly handle everyone's home internet. Probably not realistic from a bandwidth perspective.
And it really depends where you are. Exley's mentioned they're still stuck on ADSL with bad 4G reception, so the whole 5G dream isn't universal yet.
Not at all. It highlights that infrastructure gap. We talk about 5G, but the reality on the ground varies wildly.
But okay, it wasn't all negative. There was Steeplow, who said they've actually been using 4G plus outs tethered via USB for 4 years, paying just €15 a month.
4 years on 4G plus outs. That's commitment. Did they say it was reliable?
Yeah. Claimed good stability and unlimited data. But then Smartfeel jumped back in, pointing out the fair use policies, where unlimited isn't always truly unlimited if you use a ton of data.
The infamous fine print. That's crucial. If you're thinking of this as your only connection, you really need to know what those limits actually are. Throttling could be a real pain.
Looking ahead, Cyril Mesa seemed pretty optimistic about true 5G, talking about millisecond latency, which sounds incredible for gaming.
Right. The theoretical potential is there, but Smartfeel, again, was skeptical about how that translates to the real world, especially in crowded areas. Network congestion is a big factor.
And Academic Store 4031 even argued that 1Bs might be too optimistic anyway, saying it's probably an average and maybe still not low enough for really competitive gaming.
It's that gap between lab specs and everyday performance. Mobile networks inherently face challenges with congestion and consistency that fixed lines often handle better.
Something else that came up, which I hadn't really considered, was the environmental angle. Fair Network 9868 and Cleo Wallace 2019 suggested mobile internet might have higher CO2 emissions per gigabyte than fixed internet.
That adds another complex layer, doesn't it? If this were to become widespread, the overall energy footprint compared to fiber or cable is definitely something to think about. Sustainability matters.
Now, there was this deleted Reddit user who made some strong counterpoints. They argued 5G is more practical, no digging up streets.
Okay, logistically simpler, perhaps?
Yeah, and they thought stable 5G is possible with more antennas, linking the 5G budget potentially taking away from fiber rollouts. They also felt current tethering limits are more about smartphone tech, not 5G itself.
Interesting points. The deployment argument, less disruption. I could see that.
This user also downplayed the shared IP address concerns and even suggested 5G repairs might be faster than fixing fiber cuts.
So a more bullish perspective on mobile's potential advantages in deployment and maintenance. Still, those real-world performance doubts from others linger.
And the debate on unlimited data continued. This deleted user insisted true unlimited plans exist, while Smartfeel stuck to the terms and conditions argument. They also disagreed on how much people actually stream 4K video.
It really shows how subjective this can be. Your own usage patterns heavily influence whether the current mobile offerings are good enough.
Absolutely. And the gaming latency thing came up again. Deleted user optimistic, Smartfeel, and Xlies, not so much.
So no clear consensus there on Reddit, it seems. Lots of differing views based on experience and priorities.
Let's quickly touch on the advantages highlighted by that deleted user again. Lower setup cost compared to fiber was one.
Right, avoiding the expensive last-mile installation for fiber.
And the idea that 5G is inherently mobile, usable anywhere, unlike a fixed fiber box. Plus, potentially faster upgrades to new generations like 6G compared to digging up fiber again.
That flexibility is definitely appealing. The upgrade cycle point is interesting too, though fiber upgrades do happen, maybe just less frequently.
They also claimed 5G uses way less energy per gigabyte than 4G, maybe even nearing fiber levels. Smartfield countered that, suggesting overall usage would likely increase, negating savings.
Yeah, the Jevons paradox, potentially. Efficiency increases, but consumption rises to meet or exceed it.
And the disruption point, 5G antennas versus digging trenches. Though Miles Naismith provided examples where 5G antenna installations definitely annoyed local residents.
So maybe not always less disruptive, depending on the location and community. It focuses on user benefits, cost, portability, upgrades, but the broader impacts are complex.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly to security. You looked at an article asking, well, is it actually safe to share your phone's internet?
A very relevant question if you're ditching the home router.
It explained you can share via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or USB. USB is the most secure. For Wi-Fi, you set up a network name, password, the usual.
But what are the risks?
Faster data use, obviously. But also, you're legally responsible for what others do on your connection. Hackers are a risk, or just someone misusing it, maybe accessing illegal stuff. The key takeaway was, don't share your password lightly.
That's a big one, responsibility. And smartphones might not have the same robust firewall features as dedicated routers. It's a different security posture you need to manage.
The article offered tips. Get a big data plan, change passwords often, share only with trusted people, turn off the hotspot when not needed, and be aware your phone's Wi-Fi might broadcast info.
Solid, practical advice. Security hygiene is critical if your phone becomes your main internet gateway.
So how much data can you get on mobile? An article from Zone ADSL mentioned plans in May 2025 offering over 200 gigabits.
That's getting substantial, enough for many households, potentially.
Yeah, and it mentioned Free Mobile in France potentially offering unlimited data if you bundled with their Freebox, and Bouygues Telecom having unlimited weekend data options.
Interesting options, but often tied to specific providers or bundles.
Exactly. And before switching, the article advises, check your local mobile signal strength, realistically assess your actual internet usage, and be careful sharing if your plan isn't massive. It even showed how to check usage on Android OS.
A good reality checklist. It's not just about availability, but suitability for your specific situation.
Crucially, it noted these big unlimited plans are often country-specific, usually just within France in this case, with limits abroad. Starlink was mentioned as a global, though pricey, alternative.
Right, so portability has its limits depending on the plan's terms and where you travel.
Another piece suggested this whole trend of connection sharing, maybe driven by dissatisfaction with internet box prices, could actually lead to the decline of those boxes.
An interesting thought. Are operators inadvertently encouraging people, especially younger users who favor mobile anyway, to ditch the traditional setup?
It felt like it. The convenience and potentially lower cost of just using your phone plan is tempting.
It certainly taps into that desire for simplification and maybe cost savings.
Now, a common worry. Does using a hotspot just chew through more data inherently?
Ah, the double counting fear.
Exactly. An article from Nomad clarified, no, the hotspot itself doesn't use extra data, but...
There's always a but.
Right. You might perceive higher usage because connected devices, like laptops with bigger screens, often pull down higher res content. Plus, background apps and updates on those devices think they're on Wi-Fi, so they're less restricted.
And connecting multiple devices simultaneously or just doing more data-heavy tasks because you're on a bigger screen, it all adds up.
Makes sense. So it's not the hotspot magic. It's just using more data on the connected devices.
Precisely. Understanding that helps manage usage.
And Nomad offered tips. Monitor usage, limit background data on connected devices, maybe lower streaming quality, connect fewer things, use data saver modes.
All good strategies to keep data consumption in check when tethering.
Okay, another big practical issue. The phone's battery. We found an article warning about this.
Yeah, I can imagine that's draining.
Seriously. It talked about the real risks. Overheating, wearing the battery out much faster, even potential phone slowdowns. Basically, your phone is acting like a mini Wi-Fi router, and that's energy-intensive work.
So instead of a typical 2-year battery lifespan, you might significantly shorten it with constant tethering.
That was the warning. And battery replacements aren't cheap. They mentioned Apple pricing as an example.
Ouch. So, a potential hidden cost to factor in. Convenience now might mean paying for a new battery or even a new phone sooner.
Thankfully, it gave tips to minimize the damage. Limit tethering time, Keep the phone cool, connect only one device if possible, and prefer USB tethering since it uses less power.
Helpful, but they also underline the compromises. It's not quite a seamless replacement if you're constantly worried about battery health.
Finally, let's touch on gaming. There was a Reddit thread asking why someone might lag even with fast internet.
The classic bandwidth versus latency confusion.
Exactly. One user, SP3NGL3R, had a great analogy like talking to a distant planet. High bandwidth is like shouting loud, but latency is the time it takes for the message to get there and back. For gaming, that round-trip time, the ping, is critical.
Right. Downloading the game fast is one thing, but getting those real-time updates during gameplay needs low latency. High bandwidth can't fix high ping.
The thread mentioned factors affecting ping. Your own network setup wired is usually best, your ISP, and the distance to the game servers. Buffer bloat in routers was also mentioned.
And Fender Stratoblasters specifically called out satellite and cellular connections as often being bad for gaming precisely because of latency, even if speeds look okay.
Though interestingly, they suggested Starlink might be better than older satellite tech due to its lower orbit and thus lower latency.
Still, compared to a stable fiber connection, mobile latency, even on 5G, can be more variable and potentially higher, which is often the killer for competitive online gaming.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, looking at everything the Reddit debates, the expert articles on security, data, battery, can mobile 5G realistically replace a home internet box? It's complicated.
Very. There are clear potential upsides, cost, flexibility, maybe easier setup, but the downsides are significant too. Reliability questions, real-world speeds versus advertised, those data cap concerns, security management, the battery issue.
And definitely the gaming latency problem for serious players.
What this deep dive really underscores is that while mobile tech is advancing incredibly fast, it's probably not a universal one-size-fits-all replacement for fixed broadband just yet.
It seems like it really boils down to your individual needs, right?
Yeah.
Where you live, how much data you really use, what you use it for, especially gaming, and how tolerant you are of potential instability or battery wear.
Exactly. For some people, maybe those with lighter usage or in areas with great 5G and poor fixed options, it might already be viable. For others, especially heavy users or gamers, fiber probably still holds the edge for now.
Which leaves you, the listener, with this thought. Is relying solely on cellular, like I'm trying now, just a niche thing, or is it genuinely the future for many of us? What needs to change technology, pricing, network build-out for mobile to truly challenge fixed lines across the board? Something to chew on.
It's a fascinating space to watch, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, this has been The Deep Dive.
Thanks for tuning in.
And a quick note before we go, this has been Le Podcast de Philippe, and we're on a mission to reach 1,000 subscribers. So if you found this interesting, please do consider subscribing. It helps us out a lot. Until next time, keep exploring.